Okay, dear viewer, many thanks to you for joining us on the program, The Arena on Aneke Television. Thanks for joining us on this edition. My name is Chris Aneke. Yes, today our searchlight is beaming on the place of accountability and transparency in governance. Yes, of course, in democracy, the beauty of every democracy is the fact that will always be periodic elections where the people exercise, the rights, legitimacy to change in their leadership, But then again, what is democracy? What is democratic leadership without accountability and transparency, especially with the prudent management of resources? Well, more on that on the show today because we have a guest who is very well grounded when it comes to issues around good governance. Yes, of course, a medical doctor by profession, but he's a public affairs analyst. Dr. Chikeze Obasi. It's a pleasure having you join us on the show today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So, dear viewer, that's the program for today. Stay with us as we launch on the show. Dr. Obasi, I wouldn't know. You are an advocate of good governance in society. Yes, of course, we know your works. You're a very strong, powerful voice when it comes to good governance, good leadership, political analysis, how we should get it right. But then today, on the show, we want to begin with you on this note. We want to say the place of accountability, the place of transparency in governance. Let's begin with, understand, when we say accountability. What are we looking at?
Okay, first, this is not a class, so we can try as much as we can to reduce
it's not a class.
What a layman or any other person would understand. By my background, I'm a medical doctor, but I think I understand some of these few issues.
That's right, sir.
Let's take a look at, you send somebody on, on an errand. You expect the person to come back and give you a feedback. That means the person is giving you an account of what transpired. The person is periodically telling you, this is what I have done. That person is trying to be accountable. For some of us who might begin to look at accountability from the point of, from the point of finance, but it's not only that finance, because maybe look at accounts and accountability. But it's a process whereby the political office holders, the people in government whom we have elected, should periodically be accountable, be held accountable. They should actually explain to people what they've done. They should be able to take responsibility of what has been they've actually handled. It doesn't really matter whether what you are responsible for is right or wrong. Remember, anybody who tells you that government it must be correct all the time, that person is living with God, not with human being, because it's only human beings will always make mistakes. That's why we have periodic changes. So now you have this accountability, probably in form of political. You may have it in terms of legal, or administrative. For example, government should be able to adhere to the Constitution and uphold rule of law. That simply means it's accountable. Obey court orders. That means the government is really understanding what it's doing. And then you have governance, which is the one most of us will understand. Political office holders periodically going on, using mass media, either traditional or the orthodox, to explain to people, and take responsibility for their actions. That way you become accountable politically to people, because you might be doing a lot of things, in governance, and people may not really understand what you're doing. So periodically you allow the aides. During the second year anniversary of this present administration, I remember the ministers took turn, to go on air to say what they've been doing
in their ministries.
Now, last week or last 2 weeks, the Arewa Consultative Forum held a meeting, and 68 top government officials had to go back to the northern part of Nigeria to explain to them how, in fact, account their stewardship to them, because there were this agitation that the North had been marginalized. And then they had to, go back to be accountable to those people and explain to them. And that we could actually look at this political accountability. Now, for us, legal accountability, like I mentioned earlier, you find you must obey rule of law. You must allow citizens to act, and you explain to them what happens. And then you uphold the Constitution, in a very transparent, justifiable way. So that's what accountability is. Now, for us looking at transparency, transparency is like you come into a place and you see how it is. If I say something is transparent, it simply means that it's open. Everybody can see and understand what you're saying. And then you now see that, but if you use accountability, you can actually explain to people and your government becomes more transparent. And in transparency is you try as much as you can to allow people to have access, to information. For some of you who are asking for information from government, when you have a freedom of information bill passed, you expect that when you get into the government office and you demand for an information, it's made transparent. You have your budget you pass, it's made transparent. House of Assembly passes law, bills, it's in the open. You hear public debate on a bill. It's just to make it transparent, so everybody should be able to understand. There are two aspects to it. Government can actually, on their own, begin to be transparent, by opening their doors, on their own, to tell you this is what we're doing, and then the financial accountability, and then following their budget as it were. And then you can actually request for that transparency, to explain, for people to see and x-ray your government, in terms of funding, in terms of human rights abuse, in terms of everything. The other day we saw onwa, K1, behave like a terrorist, and we saw the young girl of Akwebom. And then people are already beginning to ask, why would you treat the same, not even the same crime, but a
particular state,
so people
differently.
People are beginning to ask, why should the ministry, aviation industry, treat the same offense differently? One is remanded in Kirikiri, while the other person. So you discover that you must explain your actions. You must be accountable. The ministry the security operative has to tell us why K1 is given the pat on the back, and then the young girl was put to prison. But right now we are not getting any information. Now, what's the basis for accountability and transparency? You discover that both two are ingredients, about which government is viewed. I always maintain that one of the banes of the government is that they are not accountable and they are not transparent.
They are not?
Yes.
Before we come to that stage, yes, you've just given us the background, the introduction, the understanding. At least the viewer now understands what accountability in government, in governance means and what transparency equally implies. But then we have different forms of government, as well as different types of government. For you, where do you think accountability and transparency speaks more? Let's do a little comparison between the military government and the civilian democratic government. Where do you think accountability and transparency speaks more?
No, by virtue of the military, don't question them. You have no right to question them. It's all about whatever a group of people sit down and decree and tell you must do. You have to do it. You have no right. So you can't talk about accountability and transparency under the military, except if the person is a benevolent dictator. There are dictators that are benevolent. They want you to know what's happening in the government. But when you hear the word Supreme Military Council, what does that imply? Whatever you've done in the country, they are supreme. So they've taken the powers of the society. What we do every 4 years is to renew our mandate and collectively bring our powers and hand it over to a group of people called elected leaders. And when the Supreme Military Council is that the people, by use of brute force, gathered themselves and then they took over the powers, and they're not interested in whether you gave it to them. So in the first instance, there was no accountability in how they got the power into the power. There's no transparency in how they got to the power. So why are you demanding for accountability and transparency from them? So that's one. Then, unless, like I said, you have a benevolent dictatorship that Babangida tried to masquerade when we were saying there is a presidential, military dictator. That's what I call benevolent dictatorship. In that instance, you might see some element of accountability because you notice that under Babangida at the point, he allowed the legislative and judiciary to work, as much as they could. And when he wanted to annul the election, it became a very difficult one for him, because then FEDECO, I think it's FEDECO, was an independent body. So he tried to utilize the court, and they went ahead to announce the result. You had to use the brute force, to stop the election. So you cannot really talk about accountability and transparency. I think accountability and transparency is coming. We should come when you talk about democracy.
Democracy.
Democracy, yes.
So what now happens when you find a situation where a particular people now begin to yearn for military in governance? They begin to yearn for it.
Okay, let me explain here a little bit.
If we're saying he has no business with being accountable or transparent in leadership and governance, what now happens when the people themselves now begin to yearn for the military governance?
Okay, you see, democracy does not mean that the governance will be good.
Oh.
No, it is not synonymous to good governance.
Even though it's explained to be the government of the people, by the people, and for the people?
I will answer this question.
Go ahead, though. Go ahead. Just go ahead.
Now, you see, that is what I call utopic democracy.
Okay.
Nowhere on earth has people, a greater number of people, elect their leaders, and you want, that country to move forward. So it's an idealistic state. In every democracy you've seen that, thrived, there's this some shade of not being idealistic. I'll give you a typical example. American democracy, you notice that the vote of the people may sometimes not count. Yes. The recent issues we have between Trump and Clinton, Clinton had about 2.5 million votes to 3 million votes, higher than that of Clinton, higher than that of Trump. So by majority vote, she won.
That's during Trump's first outing.
Yes. So, but why was she not the president? Because a group of people called the collegiate voters, who are less than 600 in number, sat down and said, no, we are voting Trump. And Trump won. That's why you see in America, you must win the majority vote sometimes. But the most important one is to win the collegiate vote. So if you don't win the collegiate vote, you cannot be American president. And if you remember, during Trump's second tenure, what he was actually asking was that the collegiate should veto what the populace said. And they felt it was wrong, they wouldn't do that. So if you if you can say, in Africa, some of them will say guided democracy. Because
that's the language.
Because, you see, it is less than 1,000 persons determining the fate of 350 million people. That's for America. Let's go to UK again. I begin to ask question, has any UK citizen actually voted the Prime Minister? Or the monarchical leader that actually leads them? King Charles, this time around. Nobody has voted them now. And nobody has ever voted Prime Minister. What you vote is your MPs. And a group of people will settle down in one room and elect amongst them who will lead the country. So in these two scenarios I just painted, it's covered that really that democracy, was it really the full meaning of government of the people, for the people, and by the people? And I'll explain what this implies.
Okay.
I tell people that I have never seen a class, a set of students, who decided in the university to elect a person who is an addict to club as a course rep.
Okay. Even
those addicts, even if all of them go on club every day, they want to elect one young girl who is a born again. Yes, because at that level you can't influence them. In fact, all of us know clearly if you want to elect your course rep, there's no bribe there. They want to look for the person that is sane, who always comes to the class, who is interested in academics, to lead them. So why wouldn't they elect those that go to club? Why wouldn't the young girls elect those that take them out to buy shawarma? Why are they electing the young girl or the young boy whom they know Every Sunday he carries his book to to the Bible, to the church. At that level, when your peer analyzes you, when people who understand you very critically, you don't need to bribe them. And that's why we know clearly option A4 was a difficult one, because you must begin the winning of the election from your own polling unit. And for us in Igbo land, they will tell you that your munna will always tell you how you are, irrespective of how much what amount of money you have. But let's look at what democracy we are practicing. Let's look at it critically.
In a quick form.
Now, I keep telling people that if the video today decides to pair with Rema and then making Fino their campaign manager, they will win any presidential aspirant that comes out. No matter whom you think you are.
Because of fame and popularity.
All they need to do is to keep dancing around Nigeria and they will win. But that's the truth. They will gather every Nigerian, every young person to buy voters card and they win election. If any day God decides to go into the brain of Davido and Burna Boy to campaign for election, they will win. There's nothing you can do.
Maybe you're selling an idea to them.
No, that is the wrong aspect of democracy, because those people that will vote them, the so-called masses we have, don't have the critical thinking. People don't have time to sit down and analyze each individual. So for those of them in America who actually practice that college vote, those 500 and something persons will settle down and say, let's look at this candidate from beginning to the end. How does this candidate actually make America great? Because the masses will always listen and hear what appeals to them. I'm going to water everywhere. They would agree. Nobody will ask, how would you water the place? But when you now come to that little number who are critical, who have studied America, and who have learned about American democracy, they are the people that will settle down and say, look at this man. He said he's going to reduce poverty to 0. Is it possible to reduce poverty to 0%? They will say no. They will say this man is a liar. We will not vote him.
All right, so that's where the college system becomes very relevant in the American political, circle. But then again, we are not done yet, because we'll return to continue with the conversation with Dr. Chikezie Obasi, because we want to actually look at how the followers could hold the leadership, hold them on the path of accountability and transparency. Stay with us, dear viewer. We'll be right back. Welcome to Aneke TV, the heartbeat of culture, truth, and innovation. From breaking news to inspiring documentaries, from grassroots traditions, mysteries of life to global perspectives, we'll tell your stories. We amplify your voice and your vision. With every screen we light up, we connect, inform, and empower. It's more than a television. This is Aneke TV. We move with the world. Program, The Arena on Aneke Television, and we still have the honor of having the presence of Dr. Chikezie Obasi, a public affairs analyst, though a medical practitioner with us, talking to us on the place of accountability and transparency in governance. Yes, people have been encouraged and enjoined to hold leadership accountable. But how do you even do that in the first place? You have to understand what accountability and transparency actually implies. So he's here talking to us on these lines. So, Doc, back to you now. Yes, we've been able to establish clearly what accountability, what transparency in governance means, and why people are even needed in the first place to be in government. And we've also been able to establish the difference between this type of government and that one. And for us to appreciate the fact that if we're actually yearning for a particular government to come on board, understand that this one would not have accountability. Yeah. So these are just the implications behind when people now begin to say, we want the military back in government. We want them back in government. So over the years, have they been accountable? But again, the democratically elected leaders, do you think they are accountable? Do you think they are transparent? You made reference to the Freedom of Information Act. How far have that actually helped? We are press people, journalists, broadcasters. Do we really have this freedom of expression, freedom of information? Do you think we have it here, Doc?
Okay, let me say this. Again, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum from 100% freedom of information down to 0% freedom of information. It's a spectrum.
Okay.
An autocratic system like you have in North Korea, ultimate autocracy, you have nothing, it's zero. You cannot say anything. In China, it is a gathered information that you will actually get. And somewhere like Africa, you hoard information, you demand for it, you go about it, you are, cajoled, sometimes you're imprisoned, sometimes you're even killed, depending on governance. In America, you now see that sometimes the journalists are bullied. Trump is one typical example of a person that will always tell you from CNN, from this, you're a fake news reporter, trying to bully you. But if you go to Europe, that's where you see more of this transparency,
okay.
Where you operate. So most of them quasi-socialist system or quasi-capitalist system. They've advanced so much in the democracy that they've come to a point where virtually everybody, close to 95% of people are within the middle class. And very few people are very super rich, and then very, very extremely minute are poor. So in that arena, you discover that they've so much advanced. Now, in our own clime, you could see that the journalists have not actually been allowed to do what they should do. Thanks to social media, because the space has been so much open that you don't know who to hound or who to hold down. If you're trying to hold an information, some other person in his own village will...
It's a free-for-all affair thing,
So you begin to... And that has actually, helped in accountability and transparency. Because politicians have come to realize the fact that the world or Nigerians have every 4 years, to hold you accountable, either to recharge your mandate or to boot you out, Sometimes it might look so difficult, but it's not all that difficult, in some instances. I'll give you a typical example. Rochas Okorocha finished his tenure and wanted to install his son-in-law. The Imo State people sat up and said, no, we're not interested in that. You've not been so accountable to us. You've not been so transparent. We are dividend of democracy. You didn't do it as we wanted. What we gave you, the mandate we gave you for 8 years, we didn't measure up with accountability you gave to us. You were not so responsible, for turning the lives of, the Imo State people around. And they booted him out. The same applicable to President Jonathan. 2014, when he came for a second tenure. Nigerians said no, and there was this struggle. At the end of the day, they said, no, the 4 years we gave you, you didn't discharge it properly, so you are going to be booted out. So every periodic election allows us the opportunity, to repay back our leaders if they are transparently accountable. And if they've actually discharged, because accountability is not about you taking responsibility. If we weigh the responsibility you've taken and we found out that these responsibilities are measuring below 50 percentile, then why are we going to give you a second chance? So election provides itself, the opportunity to, be accountable for people to recharge.
Do the people need to wait till every election season to hold their leaders accountable?
Which Nigeria hadn't done well. And those sort of safety valves that could have helped to us. In America, that's what we call midterm election.
That's right.
Now, that allows people to hold government accountable. And the pattern of the voting will tell the people in government whether you are doing well or not. It's not applicable in UK and so many other places. But in Nigeria, because of the way our electoral system is structured, we hold one 4-year cyclical election. So it becomes a problem. Again, there is this provision that allows for recall. Unfortunately, that provision did not allow for recall of the governors or executive position. But it allows for recall of the judiciary, which I can't remember if anybody has been.
And that's the question. Has any legislator been recalled before?
Then there is this provision, for removal of governors, or leaders through the legitimate mechanism of impeachment. When the assembly members feel this man is not doing well at all. But again, we know it's a Herculean task, doing that. But by and large, ours is not the best, I must tell you, because waiting for every 4 years, to get somebody accountable may not really be that best. Now, again, you have our judiciary system that would have actually aided especially in judicial or legal accountability. For example, a legislator or a contractor or even government that was a fictitious contract should be able to, should get freedom of information, and such individuals that allow that contract to go on, be prosecuted. In civilized climes, you discover that these leaders can even be prosecuted while in office.
That's right.
But in our own, immunity protection actually does not allow you to, prosecute a governor. Yesterday we heard that Tambuwal has been arrested by EFCC for allegedly over 100 billion, I think 180 something billion.
180 billion
naira. Yes, why wait all this while, for you to arrest Tambuwal? Because that immunity clause protected him, number one. And then when you are looking for somebody, to be accountable after he must have finished 8 years of his tenure in governance, may not sound too well. So you look at, we have a lot of issues, that our democracy has not given us that opportunity to hold people accountable. If assuming they are, one, not transparent, they've not judiciously utilized the opportunity given to them, or they've corruptly enriched themselves.
Okay, Doc, for want of time, I wouldn't know. So how could the people now, because if you wait for the very crop of leadership we have now, accountability, it will be too expensive. How could the people, because they say power belongs to the people, how could the people?
I must tell you that Nigerians have been doing well. Let me explain this clearly.
In what sense now?
Yes. Over the past 2 years, you remember this government has been in government for 2 years.
For 2 years now.
But I can tell you that activities that have gone on in this government in these 2 years is almost on every daily basis. Following the outcry of people, we saw the government, say they are going to put some construction work on the ground. The Port Harcourt Maiduguri track to be revamped. Southeast Development Commission, gave them money, to kickstart. We saw the other day, Mr. President signing into for Southeast. I'm giving as for example, because people are now telling you, if you don't do this, we are going to hold you down, and it's just 2 years. Now people are beginning to demand more, and government are becoming, unsettled as the day goes by. They know clearly that the last election, the votes of people to a reasonable extent counted. And people are going to hold down and make sure that that vote that they cast, which people couldn't upload, this time around they upload it. And people are beginning to understand clearly. It might be difficult for you to constitute an infraction to the people's wish. So the government itself is responding aggressively. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year they'll tell you that fuel pump price has reduced to 500 naira, dollar has come down to 800 naira.
In Nigeria?
It is possible, because it's only when people demand and they see clearly that the voting pattern is going to go against them. That's only when politicians act. Remember, Napoleon, French Revolution, right, did not come because the politicians wanted things to be done right. No, it is the middle class that rose one day and said, look, we can't continue being idiots and ants to these guys. We're going to chase away the bush as is. And they did that. The other leaders across Europe now felt, if we don't do this, the middle class will chase us out. That is how the UK and the other European leaders changed the narrative. They were not good. That is the truth of the matter. No leader anywhere in the world is interested in you. If you give them the opportunity, they will make sure you're a slave. You eat like an ant, you eat like an ant and work yourself out. You give the harvest and they will call you everything. In fact, let me use the word, to an average politician across the world, if you give them, they want you to be a slave. But because people had over the time demanded for what is there, demanded for accountability, transparency, and then treat them, sometimes violently, that's when they actually. So for me, how do we hold our leaders accountable? 2027 is around the corner. And I must tell you that those of us should begin to interrogate the leadership. I keep telling people, I don't believe in let's change the governance. But let's look at, more importantly, the person coming in. What is he going to do differently from what others are doing? You don't come back to tell me that, you don't come telling me that this government is not doing well, so let's change it. So the question is, if the government is not doing well in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas, he is doing well in 1-2 areas. So what are you going to do in these areas differently? And what is the pathway to what you're going to do? Anybody that comes today to tell me that you revive Nigeria in less than 10 years, I will tell you, I beg, get out of this place. You don't know what you're saying. It's either you deliberately want to deceive me, or you are interested in telling me, you don't know what government is all about. But if you come to tell me that, look, we are going to make sure that within our first 1 year, we're going to run a blueprint on how to revive Nigeria that will take into cognizance all the infractions, the problems we have, taking into cognizance the socio-demographic data we have in the country, taking into cognizance the inequalities when it comes to constitutional, reform, taking into cognizance how Nigerians should be patriotic. I will know that, look, somebody is thinking of how to channel a country to 2 or 3 decades, program of development. Because that's when I will listen to you and understand you're doing something. That's what I think the discussion should be now. So that by 2027, we can either say, Mr. President, you know what? Because when the discussion goes on, they know, they hear. It's either if you have not changed your pathway, towards this what we want by 2027, let's give this second person a chance. And then we must cast the ballot and make sure that the person that will cast the ballot.
So we must cast the ballot. That's the message here. We can actually demand for accountability and transparency from the leadership by ensuring that we do the needful through the ballot boxes. Well, I think that's going to give rise to another line of discussion, because now we'll begin to hear of 1 or 2 politicians promising the people of a single time, if given the opportunity to lead 4 years. That's what we're talking about. How possible is that? And that's going to raise a lot of doubts. But then, Dr. Chikezoba said, that's not the issue for today. We are done with you for today. Maybe in subsequent outings, we'll have to look at the possibilities around these things. Thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you very much.
Yes, dear viewer, that's much we'll take on the arena today on Aneke Television. I am Chris Aniwogo. Bye for now.